I just got my hands on the GFX and I'm going to take a fantasy portrait of a girl with fire in her hands and this little grove of trees behind me. PhotoFlex always has great equipment. This month they're giving away 3 starlights and 3 modifiers and 3 stands in 1 bag. So get over to theslantlens.com and sign up to win it. Hi, this is JP Morgan. Today on the Slanted Lens, we're going to do a fantasy portrait. We're going to take this new GFX, it's a 50S by Fujifilm. We're going to see how it works on set and if this camera as a medium format can hold up to the rigors of shooting fast and doing one of our fantasy portraits. So let's get started and see what we can do. Let me just talk about the shot that I want to get. I want to get a shot, it's a fantasy portrait. You have a woman in the woods, she's holding a flame in her hands, and that flame is lighting her face. You see all the trees are backlit, so they're just black lines with her holding just a flame rod. And then we're going to have to retouch that flame down into her hands. But we're going to add light into her hands so it looks real, like that flame is in her hands. Let's take a look at how we put our set together. It's been raining so hard here in LA that a tree around the corner fell over right in the middle of the street. So I went up there with my van, I cut all these big branches, actually the big kind of parts of the tree out, brought it here and we kind of made our own forest. These aren't just trees that are in my backyard. Each one of these was placed to camera so we knew exactly where we wanted them, could kind of dress them around her, kind of create our environment around our talent. We just hammered in conduit in the ground, wired into that conduit to kind of make our forest. So that's our beginning point. So now for our smoke machines. You know, I've learned from being outside, at nighttime, daytime, doesn't matter, there's always some kind of wind, some kind of current going around. So we set up 3 smoke machines. We put one up front, we put one on each side in the back, and so it made it so we could turn either 2 or 3 of them on, or just one of them on, depending on how the wind was blowing. So if the wind was blowing this direction, we turn the smoke machine on that side on. If it was blowing the other direction, we turn the other one on. And then we'd have the one up front to kind of just push a little bit of smoke in the foreground because sometimes it doesn't look right. If there's just all smoke in the background, there's no smoke in the foreground. So now let's take a look at how we set up our lights. The very first thing we did was put a Baja B6 in the background as a backlight. There's just one light back there. It's going to give us a nice backlight on all of our smoke. But I want a little bit of blue out of it. So we took out of the Roscoe Digital After Dark kit and we put on what's called a Theater Booster 2. It's a 372 Theater Booster 2, which is just a light blue. Gives us a little bit of blue tinge to the light that's going to go into that smoke in the background. The second light is we put a Baja B4 on the camera left side. It's got a 20-degree grid on it and it's got a half CTO, so it's a warm light. It's going to imitate what that flame will look like in her hand to give us this warm light that kind of bathes her face but gives us a nice highlight on her face. So those two in combination, sometimes we'll have the light from the flame and the B4, sometimes it'll just be the B4. But that gives us that kind of light that looks like it's coming from the flame. So that's our second light. The next light is a Baja B4 overhead with an Octodome on it and a grid. We just want to get a pool of kind of fill light around her legs and around the foreground, but we don't want to open up all the trees around her. I want the trees to be silhouetted in the shot. So I want those to all be silhouetted by the backlight, but I do want some openness to her body, to her legs, and we accomplish that with that Baja B4 in an Octodome. So now our last light is a pencil light that she's holding in her hand. That pencil light is not meant to light her face as much as it's just meant to give a glow in her hands, as if that flame is sitting in her hands. We run that pencil light back to a 400-watt Dynalite pack. In that 400-watt pack, we've dialed it down just about as low as it'll go. I just want to see a glow in her hands from that light. So here's our first image. It's absolutely dark out there. There's nothing to be seen. So here's our image with the Baja B6, our background light. So here's our image when we add the B4 on her face with the grid. In this next image, you see the pencil light and the fill light at work. So let's talk about the camera settings. I'm shooting at 400 ISO, 1/60th of a second, and I'm choosing f8. The reason I chose f8 is because on a medium format camera, you've got a larger sensor. What that translates into is that f8 on that larger sensor is going to give you the same depth of field as f5.6 does on a smaller sensor. So if I want a little bit of depth of field at f8, I'm not getting that much. I could have opened up to 5.6 and made it a little shallower, but I felt like with the trees back there, it fell off nicely at f8. I think this is a perfect setup with the lady with the fire in the woods for this camera to test the sensor, because you've got a lot of darks to lights and you're going to see that grain transition, you're going to see the light transition from those different areas, and it's going to be a really good test on how clean and how beautiful is the sensor. So this is not sponsored by Fujifilm. They are not paying us to do this. I just really wanted to shoot on this medium format because I think it's a gorgeous large sensor, that 51 megapixels plus. It's just a beautiful sensor. It's like 1.7, so it's a large sensor, and I just want to see what the images look like in that sensor. And if the camera works fast enough and works well enough, then I think this is an incredible option. Plus, Plus the fact that it's a mirrorless camera. It's so small compared to a lot of medium formats that it's just really easy. I can put this in my camera bag in about the same space that my Mark IIIs take up. A couple of things that I love about it. It's really set up like a traditional, old school 35mm camera. You've got your ISO knob here to change your ISO. You've got your shutter speed knob here to change your shutter speed. You've got the aperture on the barrel of the lens. You can change your aperture right there. So it's just really simple to get to the things and to change the settings. You see all the settings come up in this little window here on the side. You look through, you can easily change the autofocus. The autofocus was very fast for me. It is a contrast autofocus, which means you've got to have a little bit of light for it to work, but it worked flawlessly for me. I had no problems with the autofocus when I was shooting. The only thing that I saw, as with most cameras, and that's just maybe the way I shoot, it's just the buffer starts to slow down because I'm shooting so fast. And you're moving a lot of imagery, large images, and that's to be expected. So it really didn't surprise me. You know, I guess I was hoping for a miracle. I can move huge images and shoot them as fast as I want, and it's not going to slow the camera down, but that's just not going to happen. But it was not so that it could keep up with the recycle time of my strobes. I wasn't having to wait. I wasn't having to shoot and then wait. It really worked flawlessly with the Bajas. So I did like the fact that there's various aspect ratios on this camera, which means that if I want to look at not just this a little more square when you go to the full sensor size, if I want to make that a little more horizontal, I can just switch my aspect ratio on the back of the camera. Immediately it gives you a black bar on the top and bottom, and now I'm composing to a little more of a horizontal image. And you can make that into 16:9, which becomes very horizontal if you want to do that. I've always had a hard time with that. When I look at an image on the back, I start to compose to that whole space. I can't think to myself, well, I'm not going to use the top and bottom a little bit. I don't think that way. On my old Hasselblad, I used to put a piece of tape on the top and bottom because it was square format, so that I was just looking at what was going to be my ad size as a horizontal or a vertical. So in this case, you can just change it to the format size that matches what you're going to be outputting to, or the way you want to use it, and you can just compose to the space that you're seeing, the physical space that's there, and I thought that was fabulous. You've got a hot shoe for flash. You can sync up to 1/125th of a second, which is a little slow compared to some DSLRs, but it still gives you a sync speed that's pretty good. You can high-speed sync with it. That's all coming in the future here very quickly. We even tested the weatherproofness. We have everything set up, all the strobes are in place, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, blue sky with one cloud comes over and cloudburst. And so we had to grab bags to get on it, and it got a little bit wet, but it's weatherproof. And we proved that to be the case because, sorry Fujifilm, but actually it worked out great. So here are some of the images we shot before we did any retouching. The ISO range is not off the charts if you compare it to like an A7S II, but it's incredible to me that the grain holds together at all of these ISOs. I mean, the grain is pretty tight and very pretty. It does not have that RGB noise in it, which I found really fascinating. So we shot at 400 ISO. The images are beautiful. You can take a look at them here. So here's several of the images we shot with fire. Here's several of the images we shot without the fire, just the light in her hands. And now here's some of our final retouched images. So why would I buy this camera? I would buy this camera because it's got a huge sensor, and the sensor is beautiful, it's clean, doesn't have noise on it, and it works very similar to a DSLR. So I'm not feeling like I'm having to give up a huge amount of weight to be able to use this camera, and it's a great camera on set, so it worked flawlessly for me. So why don't you share with me why you like this camera? Why would you use this camera? Join our Facebook group and share some of those thoughts there. Tell me why you're going to use this camera. Tell me what you hope that this camera will do for you. If you've got any images you shot on this camera, get it onto that Facebook group. We want to see those for sure, so we can see it in different lighting situations. We can have that exposure, we can share it with one another. Great camera. Hope you love the image, and so keep those cameras rolling, keep on clicking. Our Mastering Studio Strobe download is meant to help you move into the world of strobes. It's meant to help you to know what to buy. And then it's going to help you know how to use them, how to light with them, how to use the modifiers with them. It'll help you move into that world of strobes and how to use them on set. So go to theslantlens.com where you can get the download today. So we're excited at the Slanted Lens here. We're posting twice a week now, every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, join our Facebook group. You can share that information on there and talk to different people in our community, and get on our newsletter so we can get all this information out to you. So come and join us.